Yes.
There we go. It's live. Sorry for being a few minutes late, everybody. Thanks for joining the Squirrel Squadron event, where we're going to be debating about using AI for sales. If that's not what you wanted to talk about, you're in the wrong place, so please go away. But if you're in the right place, would you please say hello? So, on whatever platform you are, in the comments, you can say hello to us. I'd be interested to know where you are and what brought you here. So, are you using artificial intelligence for sales? Are you interested in doing it? Do you want to? Are you artificial intelligence yourself? Who knows? Whatever whatever your situation is, this works much better for those of you who are veterans who've been to many of these. It works much better if you ask questions. Because Joshua and I will have a wonderful discussion between ourselves, but we'll finish before we're done. Because there's just we'll explore the topics. We'd much rather explore things that are important to you, questions and problems that you have. So don't hesitate. Give us a quick comment now to let us know what you're thinking and what your questions are, what brought you here. And then as we go, when you disagree with us, we'll have a multi-way debate here. We'd love to hear from you. Let me give you just the briefest summary of the squadron. Laura's going to put up a little scrolling thing about some of the events that happen in the Squirrel Squadron. That's my community of tech and non-tech people working together, learning together. It's always free. There's several thousand people in the community, and we have a forum. You see some of the interesting topics we've just been discussing down there. We have these events every week. I'm live in London next week, so if you're in London, come around and visit me. We've even got somebody flying in from the US to come to that event. So I'd love to see you if you're from somewhere else. So all kinds of interesting things happening, always of interest to both people who are super technical and very nerdy and people who are not at all nerdy and who've never written a line of code. That's the group that I try to bring together and that I love doing. So that's what we're doing. And today we have a very special guest who I've never met before. Joshua, can you confirm that no briberies have been exchanged? I haven't told you what to say. We're coming to this raw, right? And we found a disagreement and decided to talk to each other.
Absolutely. Although we have been part of many similar groups over the years, so it's not like I
Yes, we
haven't
have.
seen your name and your presence
And
all over
vice
London.
versa. So we know each other by reputation, but we ran into each other most recently when we were both on something called the Nerd Forum, total nerds in all directions. And Joshua took a very interesting point of view. He said, hey, I'm using artificial intelligence to drive sales. I can get people to actually respond to emails written by ChatGPT. And those of you who followed me for a while know that I'm always saying that you should never use a language model to do any writing that any other human being sees because it's so boring. So that's the kind of basis of our two positions. And if we can make it work, we're having a little trouble with the technology on my end, so that's why we're running a little bit late. But if we can make it work, we'll pull up ChatGPT and we'll see if we can actually experiment and see where we land. We may convince each other. We may part as friends who disagree. We'll see. So that's the basis of today. And I'll reiterate their request. If you have any comments, we can see them here. So please make them. Please disagree with us. Share your thoughts in the comments, whatever platform you're using. Also, this will be recorded. So if you need to disappear at some point, don't worry. You can always come back to where you were and pick it up from there. Laura, I don't think we need the scrolling anymore. People have seen what's there. Thanks. But Laura is keeping track and making sure everything's running. And I appreciate that she does that as my community manager. She keeps it all running. I tend to break it all the time. Good stuff. So, Joshua, let me let you introduce yourself. People probably know me because it's my channel. I can tell you all about me, but you could just go read about me. But Joshua, folks won't know you. So what do you do? What brought you to this AI world? And what's your current role that makes this really relevant for you?
So, yes, I'm an engineer by background. Grew up in the Netherlands, about 13 years there, 10 years Switzerland, now 13 years London. I started my first company when I was 16, so self-taught engineer initially. And then I did do my computer science degree when I was 23 after having already built two businesses around it, mostly because I was scared that someone someday was going to tell me I couldn't do something because I didn't have the piece of paper. And that has stuck with me because I then went on to build what became the biggest kids technology company in the world, a company called Super Awesome. That was acquired by Epic Games, the creators of Fortnite. And as that grew, I started investing in the education space, mostly about helping people learn from content online. And then after we sold the company, I thought, well, I was definitely too young to sit on a beach for 30 years. And so I thought, where do I want to spend my time? And education was front and center. Started Mindstone, which is a learning company. And then in the last year, we came to the realization that the only skill that people will want to learn over the next 2 years or 3 years is going to be how to use AI. It's also the biggest lever, I would say, in almost everyone's job right now. Is if I can help you understand how to use this tool, I've never been in a situation where I could actually walk into a room and genuinely say, I think I can make the entire room 20% more productive. And that is a pretty powerful thing to think about. So we started focusing on that. And then last year, because we use a lot of AI under the hood, we started a meetup, which was initially 30 people in a room trying to talk about how to make these models go further than what you could just read online. 30 became 60, became 200, became 400 people meeting up every month now in London alone. We started replicating that in Madrid, Toronto, New York, Helsinki, Sofia. So now we have more than 1,500 people every month meeting in person to talk about how to use AI in a practical way. So it's literally the type of stuff that we're talking about here. And as a company, we're now at the point where we say kind of Mindstone is focusing on being the skill building platform that helps bridge the gap between the potential that AI has to offer and the 10 to 40% productivity increase that everyone keeps talking about, but no one is able to actually show you how.
Got it. So do you have customers of Mindstone or attendees at these events that you can point to and say they're getting this productivity increase today? Or is it very theoretical? What degree is this actually in the market? Because a lot of my clients currently are saying we're toying with it, we're playing with it, we're thinking about it. We're getting a little bit from Copilot in GitHub, for example, but not much yet. But you say are there real folks getting that value?
Absolutely. So, I mean, this is a nascent field. Like we ourselves only had a commercial offer in the market in January. Mm-hmm. So it took a while to kind of get there. But I literally just today crunched the numbers over the last 3 months. So the program we have was initially 3 months. We now have a 3-week version of it. But the problem is, so to get proper data, we needed 3 months of operating to be able to point to something. So we are looking at, on average through the program, people went from using AI once a week to using it multiple times a day after the program. We went from them, so we asked before, middle, and after the program, how much do you think AI can automate part of your job? That went from 0 to 10, that went from 6.7 to 8.4 over the lifetime of the program. And the same thing is to a slightly lower degree, it was true from a quality perspective as well, which is how much do you think AI can improve the quality of your job? Interesting enough, the competency went down, which is a normal thing that happens, which is that at the start of the program, people thought they knew more about AI than at the end of the program.
You learn what you don't know.
Exactly. So we now have a proper data set. This was on about 300 people or so that have gone through the program. So it's a solid enough data set that it starts to you can extrapolate from it. It's not yet in the hundreds of thousands, but get in there.
We walk before we run. I'm not going to object to that. But this is a debate, so I'll ask you tough questions, and you should ask me tough questions as well. So here's one. These are self-selecting people. These are folks who are excited enough about AI to come along and take a course from you and pay for it, I assume. So these are folks who are kind of bullish. I'm curious about the late majority and the laggards, the folks who are kind of resistant to it. This isn't going to convince them because they're going to say, oh yeah, those are the excited people. Those are the people trying stuff. But they're really, it's not actually going to help anybody. Do you have any war stories? Can you point to anything and you say, look, this is where a whole call center has adopted it and suddenly they're taking 20% more calls?
Well, this is exactly it, right? So okay, the business impact, I still have to go and measure direct because this is just because it's early. But from a cohort perspective, I can definitely tell you that about half of the data that we have were actually from entire companies that have decided to go through the program. So that included the people that were excited and the people that were not.
Got it. So okay. So somebody at the top said do this, or somebody kind of got all their friends to sign up, and then they brought along everybody else who was kicking and screaming. Okay. Interesting.
That is exactly it. Yeah.
And do you have any information? Oh, go ahead. Yeah, please.
Yeah, so I would argue that the biggest there are two different types of uplifts, and there's a helicopter going right above my head.
That's
so
okay.
apologies
I was
for that.
telling you before, Cinema Verite, your dogs come in and jump on the sofa. That's okay. We
Indeed.
don't mind. Go ahead.
The you have what I have seen over and over is two different uplifts of productivity. For people that are not using it at all, there is a dramatic uplift once you start to. Mostly, the uplift comes from showing them where they can use it, because they hear about, oh, it can create a nice write a nice poem for you, or maybe personalize a bedtime story, and they're like, that's great, but it's not going to change my work life. So helping them think through, wait, what can this technology actually be used in your job so that you can go and do better work? That is where the biggest unlock is for the people that haven't used it yet. For the people that have used it, often what I have found is, and this is often the people that are technologically inclined, they are often, and I include myself in this at the start, there's a bit of a snob attitude to this technology, which is, and this goes across the spectrum, because the best engineers, the best technology-minded people are extremely good in a deterministic context. And this technology, for the first time, is entirely non-deterministic, which creates an adverse reaction for technical people. All the places where technology used to be used before are exactly the places where you shouldn't be using this technology. But all the places we never thought we could use technology are now areas that we can start to unlock. And it's actually not the area where engineers are the most comfortable. And so you end up with
we're bad at. Yeah, absolutely. I agree. Let me just point something out for people who may not know. We have an audience of both tech and non-tech people. Deterministic just means you know what's going to happen. It's not like we're rolling dice or we're flipping coins or something like that, where there's a random factor, which there is in AI and use of ChatGPT. You don't always get the same answer. Whereas you'd be very sad if your calculator or your spreadsheet gave you a different answer for 2000 plus 92 on Tuesday than it did on Monday. So that's the difference, is we want non-determinism. We want things that are not predictable as long as they're good. And that's what we're getting from AI. And that can throw, what you're saying, Joshua, is that throws people off.
Yeah, exactly. And this is also one of those biggest unlocks, which is once you acknowledge this, and actually most people will acknowledge that this is the thing, but the step they don't then acknowledge is, okay, well, so in order to use this technology, look for the areas where ambiguity and non-deterministic parts are a feature, not a bug.
Exactly. So one of the things I was telling people very early, I still tell them to do this, it's a wonderful use as one of the world's greatest actors. It's like an acting troupe. You can go to ChatGPT. We'll try this if of interest. You know, pretend to be my boss and my boss's friend, and they're both always criticizing me, and I want them to criticize me so I can deal with the issue. But you don't care if they do it a different way another time. It's actually good if they bully you in different ways so you can practice your responses. So that's a place where I'm telling people you can really get tremendous value. Here's a place where Joshua and I agree.
So the other place where I would say where almost anyone that is performing a job majority behind the screen would find value is in using LLMs to play devil's advocate on whatever idea you have, whatever problem you have in front of you. Like, there is no bad question. There is no bad pushback, right? So worst that it does is you discard the pushback or the idea that it comes up with. But there is no, it doesn't matter if it gets a question wrong.
Yes, exactly. So you and I know, now I'm going to get technical for a minute, but don't worry, I'll bring everybody else back in. You and I know that sometimes in computers, you try two different things at the same time, and you're not sure which will work, but you're happy to try both. And then you knock out the one that doesn't happen, but you saved a lot of time doing that. You can do the same kind of thing with ChatGPT or any LLM by throwing it some material, so throwing it a scene to play with you as an actor and give you practice. And like you say, if it's not great, you just say, all right, well, this one didn't work, but I'm going to try again. And I'm going to get a slightly different actor, slightly different character that I can interact with. And my goal is to learn how to interact better. So I want to have a variety. A variety is a good thing. Okay, fantastic. Absolutely. So we've established that you and I agree strongly that turning on a chat interface, and like I say, I'll bring it up here in a minute and we can try it out. Having it give you non-deterministic outcomes, results that you review and get information from and try new things and learn, we're agreed. That's fantastic. Where I think we might disagree is then using it to write things that other people read. which is what drives me bananas, is when people, and I'm sure you've seen this kind of use. I'm sure it's not the kind of use you have in mind. People farm lots and lots of different descriptions of content on Amazon, and they say, you know, do you want a blue one or a pink one or a purple one or a sable one or a saffron one? And then whoever buys it, they'll actually go and manufacture it because it's whatever ChatGPT could throw up. Now, I don't think that's what you're after for user-generated content, for user-readable content, but you're using it in ways that people read. So I'm really fascinated with how you're doing that.
Yeah. So there are two main techniques that like dramatically change the quality of an answer from actually all LLMs. I majority use GPT-4, but sometimes also Claude's Anthropic's Claude. The techniques are few-shot prompting and templating. Basically.
I'm not sure I heard the first word.
Few-shot prompting.
Few-shot. Okay, so I'm going to write that in the chat. Oh, and I see there's a comment from the chat, which I will just share. Someone says, I can't see who it is. The LLMs absolutely cannot write a nice poem. I agree, but they can write you some kind of poem.
So, no, I think it could write a nice poem. The only problem is the context and the format you give it.
We'll test that for sure. So I just want to write these words so people understand it. It's a little hard to hear. Few, a little just hard to make out the words when you're saying an unusual set of words. So few-shot prompting is one of the things that you can try. Now, I know what that is, but please explain to others who might not have heard of it.
So it's a fancy word for a very simple concept, which is feeding a few examples of what a good answer looks like and a few examples of what a bad answer looks like, and telling the model to reproduce what is good and avoid what is bad. And when I say a few, the power of the language models and where this is very different from basically most other things we've seen is like 2 examples, even one will make a dramatic difference in the output that you get, like night and day. And so you give it 2 examples of something good, 2 examples of something bad, and your output will be transformed.
Fantastic. Okay, so let's definitely try that. We're going to bring it up here and see if we can manufacture. It may or may not work for us, but it's worth understanding. And then what's the other method that you say really helps you to get, for instance, a good poem?
So it's a template, and the problem now is that like I am no great poet, so the problem we're going to run into is that what I like as a poem, other people will not. So I was going to say But for a sales email example, I'm a decent salesperson. I know a good sales email from a bad one. And
you could write a good template, as could probably most people watching us. At least something that would be interesting, that would get somebody's attention and be clearer. And then is the idea that you give it kind of holes to fill in. The American is exactly called Mad Libs. I forget what it's called in Britain. But you're just kind of filling in holes, but the rest of the words are written by a human. Once.
Exactly. So once, exactly. So and if you think about the majority of the sales process, right, is running people through a funnel. It's basically from interest to enough interest that they might be willing to think or consider a buy decision. And the thing that I found the most easy that would demonstrate a lot of this process is literally at the last part of our program. When we do it, we actually built this live, so you can build this within 20 minutes, and it's more of the question process. So the template is very easy, which is that, hello, whoever email you're responding to, some inbound that came in, you want to have a 1-sentence introduction, almost. Of introduction is like making someone feel comfortable, whatever, recontextualizing the thread of that particular bit. And then you want to, within the sales process, clarify whatever questions are still unanswered in order to get the person. So what is the size of your company, or like how do you think, exactly, whatever the qualifying questions are for you in your sales process, depending on whatever product you're selling or service you're selling.
Makes sense. My wife bought a computer yesterday, and she really cared what color it was. It's something that I don't even pay attention to, but it was really, and for a very good reason. She's an art historian, so like colors matter a lot to her. And I couldn't answer her color questions, but she managed to get the answers effectively. Not from an AI though. So the theory is that, and we'll try this, that you would have an AI in an interactive interaction with a person. In other words, I'm writing an email, it writes back and says it comes in purple, and you say, yeah, but is it purplish red or reddish purple? And it gives me a reasonable answer. Okay.
Well, and it does so in a conscious way by driving you along the funnel. so that the questions drive towards a state of having all the information you need. So the demo that we do is we have a Zapier flow that is hooked into an email, just looks for email coming in. You initially have a qualifier. So you have a GPT step, which qualifies based on the question coming in, how confident am I that I can answer that question? If that confidence rating is above a certain threshold, whatever the threshold is that the company is comfortable with, then the AI answers itself. If it is not, it goes down another branch and it instead escalates to a human.
Mm-hmm. So first thing to point out is that what Joshua is describing there is something I talk about a lot, which is you need a human in the loop. If you don't have a human somewhere in your process, if you just let AI talk to people, you're going to be in a world of trouble. And I think most of us have learned that. I don't think that's very controversial these days, because people are very worried about hallucinations. They're worried about errors. They're worried it's going to give the wrong information. So Joshua has somebody looking and checking that what's actually coming out is working, especially if the AI itself thinks that it has low confidence. Did I hear that right?
Well, that is only if the AI thinks it has low confidence.
Yep.
So the one qualifier here is I am totally fine with getting the AI to 100% have a conversation, so long as during that conversation, at every single one of its steps, it rates itself 90 and above in confidence level to be able to reply. And that this is also where I think the fine-grained detail is. If the prompt is detailed enough, where the AI can understand what does 90 look like on a scale of 100. So I don't know, the data comes or is directly answered by one of the documents that I have as part of my knowledge versus I have to make this up from my own model. Like those are things you can feed it, and you get to a comfortability level that that I even think at this point, for many businesses that have transaction values, say in the hundreds, the majority of those interactions you do not want to be doing manually.
Yeah, and I can see why that would be. Now we're going to test some of these assertions, and we'll get into that in a minute. But I just want to point out a couple of things. The first is Joshua said he's adding knowledge. So this is, I assume, taking documents that might say here are the list of colors that a MacBook comes in, and then the machine uses that. Is that part of the prompt? Do you have retrieval augmented generation? Don't worry, I'll explain that if that's relevant. But do you have? How do you get that information into ChatGPT or its friends?
It depends on the quantity of the information that I am supplying. So if in most companies, there's too much information to be able to put the entire thing in the prompt, in which case, indeed, you would be using retrieval augmented generation, and you basically upload a document of FAQs that the model is able to use at that point in time. It functions very similarly as what happens if you upload a PDF to ChatGPT and you ask ChatGPT to reason on that. It's the same technology behind the scenes.
Got it. Except that you're with retrieval augmented generation, that's like a database that the LLM can read. So what you're doing there is taking perhaps quite a volume of information that it wouldn't accept if you just tried to type it all in, but which it can accept and look up as if it were a library. So it says, I wonder about colors. Do I have anything? Here's something on colors. Then it looks it up and then it uses it. So for anybody who doesn't know, that's how that works. If you want a great example of that that's kind of user ready, there's a great tool which Laura, our community manager, just told me a minute ago she's starting to use, and I've been using for a while, called ZenFetch. So that's a way that you can put in your own data and go and play with it and ask it questions and so on and do research on it, which I've been saying for a long time is one of the best ways to use these LLMs. But Joshua's using it. Go ahead.
Yeah, one of the other examples here. So I don't know if you read about the Klarna custom support that was announced sort of 3 weeks ago or something like that.
Klarna tell us.
Very interesting case study. So obviously, venture-backed company, venture industry collapsed.
This is the buy now, pay later folks, right?
Exactly. Yep. Yeah. So basically, valuation collapsed. They had to raise a bunch more money, but they couldn't do it at the same valuation, which meant that they had to let go of a whole bunch of staff. 400 of which were customer support, and they still had the same volume of queries coming in. And so what they did is they had LLMs built in to fully automate the customer support process. When I say fully, is from start to finish, and they ended up with a higher satisfaction rate than when they had people. And this did the job of 400 people.
Okay. So that I was asking for a business case, and that is certainly a very interesting business case. One thing I'll note from that one is it seems like it's error friendly. In other words, if 1% of those people got slightly wrong answers or didn't get quite the right information or couldn't complete their purchase, that would be unfortunate. Klarna would rather it was 0%, but humans probably make 1% of errors.
I was going to say, indeed, the error rate is probably
make
not
10%
much.
worth of errors. So having some errors, even if they're kind of silly errors, and you wind up on Twitter with somebody saying, "Look at this ridiculous answer I got from Klarna," that actually might be good for them. Get them some publicity, give them a chance to give that person their item for free or something, and get some benefit from it. However, if you were answering questions about, I don't know, fires in nuclear power plants or rescuing people from a burning building, then the error rate would probably need to be 0%. You need it to be much more accurate. So I think you have to think about what the use case is before you try that. Or do you see it differently?
No, I think you're mostly right. I'm not entirely sure of the use case you did there of saving people in.
I'm not sure. I was just being silly.
Forest fires.
If you're a firefighter, basically, I'm thinking of what my brother did, which was to curate documents for oil rigs, and he would get queries about, there's a fire in compartment 7. Should we use this or should we use that? Kind of mattered that he give the right answer.
It matters, but I think what most people forget is the difference between it matters and it is better than a human are two entirely different things. Absolutely. So yes, correct. It matters, but how many humans get that answer wrong?
Yep.
And it's not going to be 0. So the question then becomes: is the LLM going to be contain more errors or less errors? So I'd say that the processes in which this is more important is when you have, say, a multi-check process. So, for example, triggering the launch of a nuclear bomb or something. I mean, I'm taking an extreme example here, but there are multiple people involved and multiple processes involved in order to prevent a single person from making a mistake, which leads me to another interesting point, which is that there was a recent study around the wisdom of the crowds applied as to LLMs. So basically looking at the overlap of answers by running through 5 different LLMs or 5 different tries from the LLMs and taking the answer that is most common between them. Same effect as wisdom of the crowds with people, which is that it's very hard to counter wisdom of the crowds on questions that make sense to offer to non-experts.
Indeed.
So yeah,
and very panel of experts is actually what many of the services that we use are actually doing behind the scenes, although strangely they're kind of opaque about it. They don't tend to tell people because it's a competitive advantage. But there's a lot of speculation, and I think it's probably accurate that something like Gemini, say, and probably GPT-4 as well, is actually feeding it to several different LLMs and then taking an average or the best answer or the one that's most confident, and then that's what you actually get. We don't know because we can't actually see behind the curtain, but people who tried this get better results, as Joshua was saying.
Yeah, so Mixtral has this, right? They were the ones who kind of publicly did the biggest one. Whoever the 7, just yesterday they came out with another one, 8 models of 22 billion parameters, and kind of you're interacting with all 8. Fully open source as well.
Which is very nice. So those results are showing that this kind of model can work better, just like you ask a group of humans. Okay, so very interesting. Should we jump over and actually try some of this? Would that be fun to do? Are you ready?
Yes.
Okay, let's see if I can make it work. Again, we'd love more questions and comments. I like the one about poems. Sometimes people are just quiet. That's okay. You're very welcome to just watch. But if you have questions, if you have things you want us to try, we're happy to do that. Now I need to go figure out how to get exactly the right one. And I want to share just that tab. So let's see.
I also prepared a little. I did prepare a few examples.
Oh, great. Okay. Well, would you rather share yours? Because we could do your examples if you'd rather. I didn't know. Joshua's just way ahead of me here. I didn't know you had something. What would you like to do?
Yeah. So the chat that we have here, it doesn't allow me to paste enough. So what I did, I took the liberty of taking a few examples of things you have said in the past from the various groups we are part of.
Oh, fantastic.
So
excellent.
Your tone of voice.
Oh, fantastic. Excellent. We're going to build a squirrel bot. Here, I'm going to take this off the screen for the moment, and we'll just we'll listen to Joshua here. And if I can get what you're telling us up on the screen, I will do that.
Okay, so shall I just do the presentation and do that here, or do I send you the
Either
script that, or
way,
the whatever
whatever
the
will,
prompt template?
whatever you know what you brought. This is a surprise to me and a very
Okay.
pleasant surprise. So whatever you think will work better. You know
Okay,
what you have. I
so
don't.
let's let's have a look and make sure that this actually works. I'm going to share my screen entirely. Share screen. Okay. Can you see my screen now?
I have to click a button, and then I think everybody can see it.
Good,
Yeah,
good.
this says it's you. So we're looking at ChatGPT 4.
Okay, perfect. Yes, that is indeed it. So what I have is basically a whole bunch of answers of previous questions, and I'm not going to kind of focus too much on it, but what I'm going to do is I'm going to preface this and say good examples.
Great. Okay.
And now
we're trying to match me. These are things that I've said. You found all the crazy stuff I
exactly.
write on the internet. Okay. Hope you haven't found anything
Yes,
old and
okay.
embarrassing, but if you did, that's fine too.
Yes. Okay, so let's ask it a question. So to be clear, I did these are kind of questions that you answered in forums and stuff like that. So it's mostly
great.
in relation to company building or technology teams, right? So
Super.
let's
Those are
ask it a
topics
question.
I talk about and our audience will be interested in. Go ahead. Let's see what ChatGPT
So what would be a
can do for us.
question? Yeah, what would be a question that we can ask?
Great. So I just had one with someone I was coaching just now. So that person asked, how can I, let me just remember what he asked. He wanted to know how to deploy and how to experiment with customers who were nervous about taking too many changes. So he wants to change his software, and he wants to know how can he change it quickly but not terrify his users. That might be a good way to put it.
Okay, I want to change my software, but can you tell me how to experiment with customers who are nervous with too many changes? Right, that's the right question.
That's exactly how somebody might ask it. Perfect.
Okay, so what I'm going to do now, be sure. Okay, I want your, or no, please.
So while Joshua is typing, I'll let you just go ahead and type, and I'll just explain for folks who might not have used this very much. What Joshua is doing is he's coming up with a prompt. So he's putting in quite a long set of pieces of information, not like you might have used it. Kind of the natural way to use this is to chat, right? It feels like messaging on your phone or something. But he's putting in lots of information. He's putting in good examples where I've answered questions like this. And now he's giving it some extra information after the question. Go ahead. What did you put in?
Yeah. Well, so after the question, I just gave it the good examples, which I'm specifically not putting on screen too much because I actually don't know quite what is in those examples.
Don't
I just
worry,
know that it uses the right.
It's fine. But go ahead. What did you just type?
Yeah, so just type here, imagine you're an experienced software engineering leader. This is important because it narrows down the data set to software engineering leaders. Second, I want to change my software, but can you tell me how to experiment with customers who are nervous with too many changes? Please put your answers in the style of good examples.
Aha, there we go. So it's going to be trying to match my style and give the type of answer that I might give. Okay, fantastic.
Yep.
Let's see what ChatGPT
and then I just hit. Yep.
Now, it's a little small on my screen. Let's see if I can zoom in so I can see it. I think our listeners can see it just fine, but I'm...
okay, so now it's coming through. Navigating customer anxiety around software changes requires strategic, thoughtful approach, particularly when dealing with clients who are hesitant or resistant to frequent updates. Okay, this is actually not great. No. It is doing mostly what you were saying, which is that the style here is too much prose. What I'm going to do now...
He's going to make this a bad example, I predict.
Exactly. That is exactly what I'm going to do.
So this is something that I'm always telling all of you to do, which is not necessarily with computers, but with your software, which is to have a constant feedback cycle. So despite the fact that I haven't been convinced by Joshua yet, maybe I'm going to be in a minute, I love that what we're doing is feeding back in, hey, wait a minute, we got a bad response. This is pretty boring. Whereas I would give some kind of vibrant example, or I would say, you're nuts, never change your software. I'd say something contrarian, like you guys are used to me saying. And now what Joshua's done is put that in as a bad example. Let's see if we can get it to give a better response.
Okay, so what is coming now is you can see that it's already being much more to the point.
Yep,
based on guidance you provided, here's a structured approach.
Yep.
Directly address concerns, engage in conversation with customers, gradual implementation with A/B testing, use A/B testing. It's still slightly too long, I would say.
Yep.
But I wonder, in the way that I've given it the good examples right now, so I've given it many good examples and only one bad example. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to take this entire thing and I'm going to create a new chat. And now we're going to change the question. So what would be another question? Just so that we can get another bad example.
Sounds super. So let's see what did somebody else ask me today? So someone was asking me about how to hire engineers really fast in Africa.
Okay. Can you tell me how to hire engineers really fast in Africa?
This was a client in Africa. I've got more and more of those these days. It's just amazing, the technical talent there. That's a side note, but let's see what ChatGPT has to tell us. So we think we're going to get a bad answer now. Follow these strategic steps based on the provided good examples. Definitely, we've gotten a bad example there.
Yeah, for sure.
Yep.
Okay, so actually, I'm going to take the entire one.
Mm-hmm.
So I'm just waiting for it to finish generating its answer.
I'll just note, this is an example of few-shot prompting, right? So you're prompting with a few different tries, and you're building it up as you go. This is fascinating. So we're just giving it a few examples to work with. And our hope is, because I would love to lose this debate, that would be fine with me, because I find the whole thing fascinating. But what we're going to look for is something that's coming out a little less boring. Go ahead.
Yeah, what I'm going to add now is I'm going to say, do not repeat good examples.
Yep.
Or anything that relates to your process.
Yeah, because we don't want this kind of thinking out loud that LLMs often do, where they say, and here's the steps I followed to get to this answer. You just want the answer. Where do I find those great developers in Africa? Hint, the answer is Kenya and Nigeria. They've got some incredible people there. A multifaceted approach, efficient outreach, streamlined selection processes, a concise action plan. Concise is good. Goal definition, local job board, social media. Don't think this is quite what I would be telling anybody.
No. So I mean, to be fair, this is not about what it tells it; it's the style in which it's telling it.
Style. Yep, and it's getting closer. I will certainly grant you that. But
it's using bullet points.
Yep.
It's getting to the point. The problem that we're having here is that we don't have enough bad examples.
Mm-hmm.
And so what I should have done and what I should have prepared maybe, and I didn't have enough time, is to actually, to even for myself, define what would a bad example really look like.
Mm-hmm. And please
then
don't worry,
do that.
Joshua, I'm just grateful that you put in this much work. I did not ask you to do this, and I'm really glad that you did, because it's giving our listeners and our viewers an opportunity to see how you work with this. And this looks like a promising direction, I have to say. We're moving in the right way. We're not there yet.
That's exactly so. Yeah, exactly. So this wouldn't be where I would stop, and normally this would. So what I'm definitely not saying is that LLMs out of the box provide you with anything that you can directly use. But what I am saying is once you give it 2 to 3 examples of what really good looks like, and 2 to 3, and by the way, we didn't do the actual templating yet. I can do that now. Actually, let me flip back to this, because that will get the whole thing to come together.
Happy to try it. I think I have to add you again, so I'll just make sure to do that. I think it's coming up. There we go.
So I'm going to create. Okay, so I'm going to do the same chat again. Whoop. Oh no, I have to go back because I think I lost it. Okay, so I'm going to take the original question.
And what I'm going to suggest you do for the template, I don't know if you can do this, if it'll succeed from your experiments, but what I'd really love it to do is to start with a punchy example. Because what's missing from these that I would certainly do is I would say, yeah, you know, I had a client 2 weeks ago that hired 50 engineers in a week. And that really gets people's attention. That's really my style. That's really what I would do. I don't know if we can tell it to try that, but if we can put that in the template, let's see if that works.
Okay. Contextualization through bullet points, and then third, snarky finish.
Excellent. Certainly sometimes have a snarky finish, especially about misuse of AI. So good stuff. So what's our question now? I got lost slightly. How to hire engineers really fast.
Exactly. And then I'm going to please use the template.
And you notice what Joshua is doing is he's putting the special text, like the bad examples and templates and so on. He's putting that in brackets, and that's helping to separate it for the LLM. It can separate it into tokens better, so it can know that this is a thing to fill in.
Okay, and there we go.
Let's see if it can come up with a punchy example. That I will be really impressed by. That would almost be like writing a poem.
Okay, it's not doing this here. Let me just retry that for a second, rather than waiting for the full thing.
Good plan. If people haven't seen this, because lots of folks will never have touched this kind of thing, what Joshua is doing there is he's hitting the stop button so that we already knew it was off track. We could read it and say, oh, this isn't really following the template. He can stop it and say start again. So that's what Joshua is doing here. I've seen people who've never used this before who try it and they say, oh my God, now I have to wait 5 minutes for a bunch of rubbish. No, you can hit stop and say, you got it wrong, ChatGPT, try again, which is what we've just done.
I'm going to do that once more again, because actually one of the things I always use and respect what's important.
Excellent. It's so funny that part of what we do is actually explaining it. It really is explaining and saying, you know, you really have to do this. You know, you'll be in trouble if you don't follow these rules. And to be convincing a computer to do something is, 5 years ago, I don't know that I would have said that that was possible. We got an error, I think.
Yeah, yeah, we did. Yeah,
proves that this is a live demo. I had a co-founder who was a salesman, one of the most brilliant salespeople I ever worked with. And I would always apologize to him when our demos didn't work, which they didn't work a lot. He wasn't a great programmer, and our system was hard to maintain. And so he'd come back and say, don't worry, Squirrel. Nobody would believe it was a real demo if it didn't have at least one error in it somewhere. So we're really using ChatGPT here. It's not a lie. Think of it as something like a dream team. All right, well, this is getting better. Dream team for zipping by too quick for me. For a high-tech thriller. A heist in a high-tech thriller. Okay, so that's a punchier example. Now we're actually getting somewhere. I could imagine it's still not great as a metaphor, but it's moving.
Well, in this case, I would have said the next step. The punchy example should be something from real experience, or at least come from real experience.
Yes,
and then it would have
start getting more. I think we've got the idea.
See now it's using the bullet points.
Yes,
and then the wrap up. So it's following it, right? So snarky finish. What's the snarky finish? Because we refer to something that not only cracks the code but does it with style. There we go.
Okay, that's pretty snarky. Okay, not exactly my style, but that's okay. It only had a few examples, and I wouldn't have expected Joshua to do the full Monty here. So I'm pretty impressed with that, Joshua. I have to say. And tell us a little bit about what more business results you're getting, because I think are you actually using this to sell? Or are your clients doing so? Because that was the thing that got my attention was we're sending this out to real humans and they are buying stuff.
Yes, absolutely. So I am now, I literally just did a session today with a company that gets a few thousand requests a month. some of which transaction value is over a few thousand, and some of which transaction value is in just under 1,000. So I don't know, 5, 6, 700. And they have rolled out a bot that automatically answers the queries for the lower transaction value and educates the higher transaction value ones, and has exactly that escalation mechanism in the middle, which is if the bot doesn't feel confident enough, or the transaction value seems to be high over a certain threshold, it starts to loop in the human again.
Got it. Okay.
And those go, and I know of one example that does hundreds of closing transactions entirely using bots. So there is no human involved whatsoever from start to finish. It's an email bot that closes sales.
Fascinating. Okay, and so we can all go lie on the beach and just run ChatGPT to actually make all our sales. But that's not true, because somebody pretty clever must have written the template and put in the good and bad examples, as we were just watching Joshua do. So there's quite a lot of art there to coming up with the prompt, to doing it right. And I assume that's what people learn, among other things, in your courses.
That is exactly what we do, is to try and get that unlock. Because the difference between if you just ask the question from ChatGPT versus when you give it the template and you give it the good and bad examples is night and day. Like, to your point, if I spend enough time, say 30, 40 minutes with enough data to really kind of craft a prompt, I am very confident I can come up with 2 examples. I put it in front of you, or 2 examples, say 10 examples, and you won't have more than a 50-50 hit ratio on what was yours, what wasn't, in terms of, so long as it says the same thing, but in one style or another. But it requires quite a lot of effort to get it there. Now, the economies of scale are there, though, which is that once you've nailed it, you can
just turn it on and it keeps closing sales for you for quite a long time. So I've got a couple questions about that, because well, one is you must have some drift. So you must have to renew it periodically, because, for example, if you sell trips to Eastern Europe, then a couple of years ago, you would have said, oh, Ukraine is beautiful this time of year, then you'd be less likely to say that today. So there's some concept drift. There's some changes that you're going to have to make to deal with changes in the world, changes in society, changes in your product. How do you deal with those?
So I tend to do that through the RAG model. So basically,
retrieval augmented generation that we talked about before, the kind of library. Go ahead.
Yeah, so I give it a set of documents that has the information on which it is supposed to answer. And then from time to time, I will change out the documents from which it is supposed to answer by updating the appeal of going to Ukraine this time of year versus a few years ago. And that is how that works. Most of the time, if the bot is programmed well enough and you program it in a way that it looks at the documents and it has a model integrated where it judges its confidence based on how well it's able to answer the questions based on the documents it has, then it becomes as easy as switching out the documents. If you place too much of the context in the actual instructions, you find yourself having to update the instructions every time.
Because you have to go in and edit them all the time. You'd much rather just change something separate from the instructions and leave the instructions, which kind of capture the human thinking, and then the actual data about, where ticket prices are lower or whatever it is you're trying to optimize for. That you can update as you go. That makes sense. Now, something else that I notice about this, Joshua, is you're really skilled at this. You've practiced a lot and you know how it works. And you've been through your courses. So I'm very happy. Don't let me forget to point people at where they can take these courses, because they seem fascinating and definitely worth learning more about. I didn't come here to sell anything, but Joshua seems to have something really valuable there. But also, it seems like you need someone to set up the retrieval augmented generation for you, to hook it up to an API, to make sure that it's connected to the emails appropriately, that there's error handling, and so on. So it's not like we're escaping from having software experts or software developers involved, right? Or am I misunderstanding? Can we just buy this off the shelf, stick it in, and we can run it ourselves?
So when we do this through our program, it's literally Zapier. There is no code involved whatsoever. The most technical step that I get people to go through is to go to platform.openai.com, use what is mostly their Google authentication, navigate to the API tab, and generate an API key.
Yep.
And
And
that's
beyond
it.
that,
Like, that's the most technical
nothing's
step in
happening.
this entire process.
Fascinating. And then so I could set up an entire email thread with multiple responses, and it's hooked up
Yep.
to via Zapier to deal with an email arriving, send it to the right prompt, because it might be a third step. It might have a different prompt than the first step. So it goes through the right set of steps and then sends the closing email as the final one. And then I assume triggers something else to actually collect some money.
Exactly. And so, well, often it ends up being like a Stripe URL, for example, that gets sent out based on a few criteria.
Got it.
The
and a talented operations person
to...
can do all those steps, because they're always using Zapier and Airtable and these other low-code tools as well.
They often go through the exact process, which is that they get an email, they look it up in some database somewhere, they formulate a response, and they reply. Like, they are the perfect people to be able to automate themselves. And what I find very interesting here is that I think what has happened to software engineering in the last 20 years is going to happen for every other profession now, which is that software engineering 20 years ago was about your ability to code. Software engineering today, you use millions of libraries to basically build solutions to problems that are in front of you. But like, how much of your time, like how much of the actual thing you're building is based on your ability to code? The coding is kind of gluing together different pieces that have been pre-written by others in most cases.
Indeed.
And
for well-conquered areas of code. So if you're building SpaceX going to Mars, you're probably writing your own, and that really does require your brain.
Yes.
But we're not going to use AI for that either. But for building an e-commerce website like I did in 2012, that's going to be straight off the shelf. You're going to mostly use Shopify and put pieces together. And what you're saying is operations folks can behave like that today, that they can start to put the Lego pieces together that don't involve humans.
Exactly, which will allow them to access entirely different levels of operation. Just like software engineers today can build systems that would be unimaginable 20 years ago, operators will be able to handle flows that they couldn't even think about just a year ago.
I remember the very first company that came to me and said, Squirrel, we want your advice, but we don't have any software developers. And I said, you don't have any software? Why are you talking to me? And they said, well, we built this thing and we don't know what to call it. And they hooked up Airtable to Zapier and a bunch of other things. They didn't have AI yet, so there were still humans, pulling the strings. But it was very, very highly automated. And they said, what can we tell our investors so we can get more money and actually hire some developers? And I thought for a long time I couldn't tell them AI. So eventually I told them it was serverless, because they weren't running any servers, and serverless was a cool term at the time. So and that worked. They raised money and then they hired some developers and they automated it. So the same kind of thing now you can do, but you actually may not need the software developer part.
And this is the never-ending problem with AI, right? That everything is AI until we can solve it, and then it is called an algorithm, or
then we don't believe
whatever
it
the thing is.
Entertaining.
Exactly.
All right. Joshua, we're out of time, and I really appreciate really stimulating ideas. I'm still not convinced. I don't think I've seen a sales email yet that would actually convince me to buy, but I think the business case you've presented is really interesting, and it feels like we're either close or maybe we're there and I just haven't seen it yet. So this is a fascinating debate. Thank you so much for coming. Where could people find your courses, your stuff? Would they just go to mindstone.com or somewhere else?
Exactly, mindstone.com. We have a version of the program for individuals where you can sign up, and we have a version of the program where we customize and tailor the entire thing to company context, and we reskill the entire company to make sure that everyone is equipped to leverage these tools in a way that helps them be more productive.
Fantastic. Well, if you'd like to talk more to Joshua, mindstone.com is the place. I've just put that in the chat. If you want to talk more to me and have more debates on these topics and learn more, just as I have sitting here watching Joshua do amazing stuff that I had not seen before, come along to squirrelsquadron.com, where we have more events like this. We have a forum where people are asking questions. You get an email from me every Monday with my latest opinionated thoughts, not written by ChatGPT yet, but maybe Joshua's going to help me to do that sometime soon. Thank you so much, everybody, for coming. And please do ask more questions. There'll be follow-ups on the forum. And Joshua, I think, is there now. So welcome to bug him there or directly at mindstone.com. Thanks so much, Joshua.
Thank you very much for having me. And thanks everyone for
Take care.
Watching.